Welcome to the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
Welcome back to the Shadow Frequency. I'm Juniper, and tonight we are heading somewhere the town is gone, the railroad is gone, and yet, according to more than a century of stories, not everyone got the message that it was time to leave. You know, there is something especially unsettling about an abandoned tunnel. A house can feel empty. A tunnel feels like it's waiting. And the one in tonight's file has had a very long time to wait. Tonight's episode is episode 357, The Ghosts of Moonville Tunnel, the railroad that left its dead behind. Deep in the forest of southeastern Ohio, Moonville was once a small railroad community built around a line that gave its people work, transportation, and a connection to the outside world. But residents also walked those tracks. Trains thundered through a narrow tunnel and across trestles, and people died along the railway. After the town disappeared, stories remained of lantern-bearing railroad men, a woman announced by the smell of lavender, and something above the tunnel that apparently throws stones at visitors. So tonight, we are digging into the real history, the folklore, and one very strange question. Did Moonville create 4 separate ghost legends? Or are people encountering different faces of the same haunting? Chris, I'll start with you. What do you make of a place where the ghosts all seem tied to the same stretch of railroad?
Honestly, June, that is the bit that gets me. One ghost near a tunnel is a spooky story. 4 different spirits, all behaving in ways connected to the railway, starts to feel like the place itself is involved. And I'm not saying I fancy standing in there after dark to test it.
I had a feeling your volunteer application might get lost in the post, Chris, but yeah, the repetition is what got me too. Matt, what about you? Is it the tunnel, the deaths, or the fact that the town itself has almost completely vanished?
For me, it's the idea that the railroad outlived Moonville in memory. The families leave, the buildings disappear, the tracks come up, but the dead railroad workers are still supposedly swinging lanterns. That is a very specific kind of haunting, and I think the real history makes it worse.
Exactly. The ghost may be folklore, but the danger was real, and tonight those two things are going to get very close together. And with that, Matt, let's step onto the old railway grade. The record is yours.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson, produced by Juniper Ravenwood, with Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
Thank you, Juniper, and this is a case where the place itself does half the storytelling. I'm opening the file tonight, and right on the top is a photograph of the Moonville Tunnel as it looks now. Brick, a black mouth cut through the hill, trees pressing in from both sides, and that old name still fixed above the entrance, Moonville. No rails run through it now. No depot, no school children heading home. But when the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad pushed into this rugged part of southeastern Ohio around 1856, the line changed everything. The railroad brought work, industry, and connection to a valley wrapped in hills and cut by Raccoon Creek. A scattered settlement grew along the tracks, reaching perhaps 100 people at its height, with a depot, school, cemetery, workers, and families. The railroad did not merely pass through Moonville. The railroad was Moonville. It was the town's artery, its road to the outside world. And every day the people living there stepped onto that artery without knowing when steel might come screaming out of the dark. The reason is simple, and it makes the story more frightening. In an isolated valley with rough terrain and a few easy roads, the tracks went where people needed to go. Residents reportedly used the railway as a walking route. Near Moonville, it crossed trestles over Raccoon Creek and passed through a single-track tunnel with almost nowhere for a pedestrian to escape. There was no bright warning system telling you a train was 3 minutes away. You listened. You watched. You knew the timetable if you were lucky. Imagine walking into that brick passage at dusk. Your footsteps echo. Water drips somewhere ahead. The daylight behind you shrinks while the opening at the other end looks impossibly far away. Then you hear something. At first, it's too low to identify. A vibration, a metallic rhythm. You stop and hold your breath. Then comes the whistle. By the time you understand what's happening, the tunnel is no longer a path. It's a trap, and the darkness behind you has begun to move. It's a trap! Death along that railway was not legend. I've got a copy of a period newspaper account in the file tonight tied to the November 1880 collision near Moonville. Let me pull this out. The report describes two freight trains coming together after one crew apparently failed to receive proper warning about the movement of the other. Later historical research identifies engineer Frank Lawhead and fireman Charles Crick among the dead. Real names, a real wreck. What strikes me is how brutally ordinary railroad death could sound in old print. A collision, men killed, the line disrupted. Then the trains had to keep moving. But crews passing Moonville would have known where other railroad men died. They would approach the same grade, the same tunnel, remembering the wreck and the warning that failed to arrive. Somewhere in later folklore, Frank Lawhead becomes Theodore Lawhead. The name shifts, but the apparition remains. Workers began talking about a figure near the tracks carrying a lantern, apparently trying to signal approaching trains. Long after the engineer was buried, some said he was still working the line. The engineer is often called Moonville's original ghost, and I love that phrase because it makes him sound almost official, as though the haunting began when he reported for duty and simply never clocked out. In some versions, a figure appears on the grade or descends from the rocks near the tunnel. In others, witnesses see only the lantern, a point of light swinging with the rhythm of a human arm. Imagine an engineer in a locomotive cab decades ago. Darkness pressed against the windows, Moonville ahead, and suddenly a lantern moves beside the line. You slow down because somebody is signaling you. The light travels toward the tunnel. Maybe it enters. Maybe it vanishes at the portal. But when the crew reaches Moonville, there is no signalman, no track worker, nobody waiting. The legend says Lawhead is still trying to prevent the collision that killed him, a warning locked in time. But I keep coming back to a darker thought. What if the engineer is not trying to stop his own train? What if he remains at Moonville because something else is still coming down that line? And then there is the second lantern. The Brakeman may be Moonville's best-known spirit, but his story feels like a memory broken and reassembled by 100 different hands. One local version places the event around 1859. A brakeman falls asleep, wakes to hear his train leaving, stumbles toward the tracks and falls beneath the wheels. Other versions say he had been drinking and passed out near the railway. Then we find a real March 1859 newspaper account describing a brakeman who fell from cars near Cincinnati Furnace after drinking and suffered catastrophic injuries. His leg was terribly mangled, and the report feared he may not survive. Somewhere between that railroad worker and Moonville's oral tradition, a ghost takes shape. The brakeman walks near the old line carrying a lantern, moving through the tunnel or near the former trestle, still trying to catch the train he missed. That image bothers me. Not a spirit seeking revenge, just a dead railroad man hurrying through the darkness, convinced that if he moves fast enough, he can still reach a train gone for more than a century. Every time his lantern appears, perhaps he believes he has missed it by only seconds. Now put those stories beside each other. An engineer with a lantern signaling a train. A brakeman with a lantern chasing one. Two workers. Two railroad tragedies. two lights moving through the same narrow corridor after dark. Historical researcher and folklorist Jeanette Quackenbush has estimated that 27 people died along this section of railway. I want to be careful. That is her research estimate, not one official consolidated death register. But even as an estimate, 27 changes the way you picture Moonville. 27 possible lives ending along one isolated line. Workers, residents, travelers, peoples whose names were remembered, and maybe people whose names slipped away. The last family left in 1947. Houses vanished. The depot disappeared. The rails were removed. Forests began swallowing the community the railroad had created. Yet the lantern stories survived. And when we come back, the men of Moonville will still be carrying their lights, but the next ghost does not announce herself with a lantern. According to witnesses, you know she has been near because you suddenly, impossibly, the darkness smells like lavender. So before we go any further, remembering that image, 2 lanterns, 2 dead railroad men, and 1 tunnel sitting in a town that no longer exists, because Moonville's next 2 spirits are going to make the haunting much harder to explain as a simple replay of railroad tragedy.
The lanterns are already enough for me, Matt. The idea that one is warning and the other is chasing something feels like 2 different moments trapped on the same line.
And I'm stuck on the fact that the tracks are gone. Whatever anyone is seeing now, there is no working railway left for a signalman to be out there serving.
Exactly. In the second half, we meet the Lavender Lady, we look up toward the top of the tunnel for the bully, and then we open one skeptical file before asking whether Moonville really has 4 ghosts at all. Juniper and Chris, I'm handing it over to you.
The railroad is gone, the town is gone, and yet something still walks the line. With a lantern in its hand, maybe Moonville disappeared from the map, but the dead never got the message.
Matt, this one has that awful slow burn quality where the history does not need much help from us. People really were walking a dangerous railroad corridor, rail wrecks happened, and then the lantern stories began. I keep wondering how many listeners are thinking, all right, I could handle one little ghost light, and how many are already yelling at us not to follow it into the tunnel. But we're not done yet, because Moonville's next apparition may reach you through smell, and the final one apparently has terrible manners and good aim. Chris, before we open those files, what have you got?
Cheers, June. I'll tell you what, 2 dead railway men apparently carrying lanterns through the same tunnel is exactly the sort of detail that follows you to bed later. While everyone is checking the dark corner of the room, do us a favor and like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using. It really does help the algorithms find the show. You can also follow the Shadow Frequency on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube and Rumble, and find us across all major podcast directories. Everything is at shadowfrequencypodcast.com every episode. The companion blog, merch, show notes and links to every platform. You can even buy us a coffee there or send an email or voice message that may end up in a future episode. Right, June, I'm handing the lantern back to you.
I'll take the lantern, Chris, but after tonight I'm checking the name badge of whoever hands it to me. All right, time to fire up the spectral cosmic message materializer, flipping the switches now. Coils humming, static crawling across the glass, and oh, there we are. Something just tapped from inside the receiver. Let's ease open this little transmission before it decides to crawl back into the wires. This one comes from Joe in Utah, who found us on Podbean, and he writes, "Hey, Shadow Frequency crew, I do a lot of driving between job sites out here in Utah, and I usually save your episodes for the long stretches where it's just me, the road, and miles of dark desert in the windshield. I listen on Podbean, and the Hauntings and Ancient Mysteries episodes are my favorites. I will say hearing a ghost story while passing an empty dirt road at midnight can make a guy reconsider every shadow by the fence line. Keep the weird cases coming, and I'll keep the headlights on. Stay strange, Joe." Joe, I'll keep the headlights on is solid advice, especially after this episode. And I can picture that perfectly, a long Utah road, Podbean running through the speakers, and suddenly every lonely turnoff looks like it has a backstory. Thank you for taking us along with you on the drive, Joe, and to everybody listening, send us your story, your question, your strange experience, or just tell us where you listen. The email is shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. And now we're sliding the mailbag back into the static and turning toward the stranger corners of the news file. Chris, the signal is yours.
Cheers, June. Joe, I respect the commitment, mate. Empty Utah roads at night are creepy enough without Matt putting lantern ghosts in the passenger seat. Keep those headlights on. Right, 2 strange stories tonight. An old NASA cover-up claim is making the rounds again after renewed attention on the late Donna Hare, a former contractor who said she was once shown a photograph of a strange object that never made it to the public. Here alleged a technician told her unusual objects were routinely airbrushed from some images before release, but no photo or official proof has ever surfaced to back that up. So for now, it remains one of the more persistent and provocative allegations in UFO lore. Our second news item tonight: a proposed climate intervention plan to cool the Earth by dimming sunlight is raising new questions about aviation safety. Researchers say that if sulfur dioxide were sprayed into the stratosphere to mimic the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions, some commercial flights could end up passing through thin clouds of sulfuric acid droplets. The good news is that the modelled exposure in this study stayed below current air quality limits, but scientists say it is one more complication in an already controversial geoengineering debate. June, I'll toss it back to you.
Thank you, Chris. So tonight we have alleged objects disappearing from NASA images and a real scientific debate involving sulfuric acid droplets high above commercial flights. Completely normal, comforting material before bedtime. I think the Donna Hare story is one of those claims that survives because the allegation itself is so vivid, even without the missing photograph to prove it. And geoengineering? Well, nothing says simple solution quite like introducing an entirely new atmospheric complication. But our train is still stopped at Moonville. We have met the engineer and the brakeman. Now a woman is coming down the old line with the scent of lavender. And something may be waiting above the tunnel with a handful of stones. Matt, open the file again.
Some ghosts scream, some whisper, and some simply keep doing the last thing they ever knew. In Moonville, they are still walking the tracks, still waiting for the train, and still watching from the dark.
Thanks, Juniper and Joe, driving those long Utah stretches with us in the cab. I appreciate that. Hauntings and ancient mysteries are a fine combination when headlights are the only thing holding back the dark. Although after tonight, he may be checking every light in the rearview mirror. And Chris, NASA airbrushing claims and sunlight dimming experiments oddly fit tonight's theme: what people believe they saw and how atmosphere becomes part of a story. So let's go back, because the men in the first half carried lanterns. The next spirit leaves something more intimate behind. The Lavender Lady is described as an elderly or thin female figure walking near the old railway route and tunnel. She appears, walks, and disappears. Then comes the fragrance, lavender. Witnesses describe it arriving unexpectedly, sometimes with no obvious source. Tradition says a local woman was killed by a train while walking the tracks, perhaps because she never heard it. Her identity changes. Mary Shea is suggested in some tellings. Others speak of a woman gathering flowers or searching for someone connected to the railroad. Maybe Moonville forgot her name and remembered only the perfume. There is something unsettling about a ghost you do not see approaching, because by the time you smell the lavender, she may have already passed you. Can a smell be a haunting? A distant light can stay 50 yards away. A shadow can hover at the edge of your vision. But fragrance crosses the distance and enters with your next breath. The Lavender Lady raises the possibility that Moonville's legends preserve people even when details scramble. Perhaps several female railway victims were compressed by time into one figure, one scent, one name. Or perhaps witnesses really encounter the same woman. I'm pulling another item from the file here, a printed copy of regional public media reporting on Moonville's ghost traditions. It records the familiar tunnel stories, including the rock-throwing spirit associated with Baldie. These are local traditions attached to a real place and repeated in regional reporting. And the moment we leave the Lavender Lady, the haunting changes. The fourth spirit is usually identified as David Baldie Keaton, the bully. Tradition remembers him as a drinker and fighter who picked on smaller men. After trouble at a bar in Zaleski, he was thrown out and started for home. He never arrived. His body was reportedly found days later, and folklore treats his death as a possible murder. Whoever killed the bully may have ended the man, but according to Moonville, they did nothing to improve his temper. Visitors near the tunnel have been warned about pebbles or small stones apparently thrown from above or around the brick portal. Baldie gets the blame. Some imagine him atop the tunnel, waiting for strangers below. And this is where our paranormal file divides. The engineer repeats a warning. The brakeman chases a train. The Lavender Lady walks the route she knew. Those fit residual haunting theory, an imprint replaying without awareness. Baldie does not. If a stone is thrown because a visitor is present, something has noticed them. It has reacted. That suggests intent. But this is also where we open the skeptical file. Moonville is almost designed for mistakes. Dark woods limit vision. The tunnel frames distant light. Echoes distort direction. Wildlife moves through the brush. Weathered brick and soil shift. Other visitors may be nearby. Expectation matters too. Walk into Moonville looking for a lantern ghost and your brain is prepared to give a moving light a name. The engineer and brakeman could be folklore contamination. One strange lantern becomes two railroad ghosts. A floral scent could have a natural source. A pebble could fall. Fair explanations, but the geography that can fool you really killed people. And when a stone lands beside your foot, reason cannot tell you whether the next is already airborne. That brings me to tonight's central question. Does Moonville have four ghosts, or are witnesses encountering different versions of the same thing? The engineer carries a light and approaches the tunnel. The brakeman carries a light and approaches the tunnel. The Lavender Lady follows the railway corridor. Baldie watches the corridor and reacts to people moving through it. Everything returns to the line. Work, travel, community, danger and death were compressed into one narrow route through the valley. Trains passed there. Families crossed it. Crews depended on it. People died on it. What if the old railway became a kind of place of memory, the psychological spine of a community? When the houses disappeared and families moved away, the stories had nowhere else to attach themselves. So they attached themselves to the structure that remained, the tunnel. Maybe the railway holds an archive, and different witnesses opened different files. One sees a warning lantern, another smells lavender, another hears movement above the bricks and feels a stone strike the ground. Different manifestations, different dead, one corridor. Or perhaps the tunnel is a lens, shaping whatever part of Moonville's past is closest to the surface. If so, the frightening question is not which ghost you might meet, it is how many stories are still waiting for somebody to walk through and wake them. Moonville today is quieter than when the railroad lived. The last family left in 1947. The depot is gone. Homes and school life have vanished into history. The route is now part of a roughly 10-mile Moonville rail trail, where preservation keeps its history accessible. There is an irony I cannot shake. The ghost stories may have helped save Moonville's name. People come because they have heard about lanterns, lavender, and stones. They arrive looking for the dead and learn that the real community once lived there. Maybe that is not paranormal, but it is kind of an afterlife. So let's end where we began. Stand inside the tunnel. No tracks beneath your feet. Forest at both openings. The brick holding more than a century of footsteps and stories. Look toward the far portal. Suppose a light appears. Small at first, swinging, Coming closer? Is it the engineer warning you? The brakeman chasing a train? Another victim whose story was folded into theirs? The frightening possibility is that Moonville has more ghosts than legends, because nobody may have remained to remember every name. Maybe the ghosts do not haunt Moonville. Maybe the railroad is haunting them, keeping them on the line, repeating the same walk, the same warning, the same last journey toward a train that will never come. And somewhere beyond that black tunnel mouth, another lantern may already be swinging. And that is where I have to leave Moonville tonight, with the town gone, the tracks gone, and a light still moving where no railroad worker should be. Maybe it belongs to one of the men we remember. The darker thought is that it belongs to somebody we don't.
That final idea is the one I'm taking away. We have 4 famous names or personalities in the folklore, but if the railway really claimed more lives, there is no reason the legends would have preserved every victim equally.
Which means the ghost without a story may be the most frightening one there. Brilliant. I was perfectly happy with 4, gentlemen.
Same here, but Moonville feels like a place where history and haunting have had so long to mix that you may never separate them again. The railroad created the town, the railroad helped kill people who lived and worked around it, and after everything else disappeared, the story stayed beside the grade. Juniper, that's the file for tonight. I'm turning it over to you.
You can tear up the rails and let the forest swallow the town, but that does not mean the past is finished with you. Sometimes the dead do not haunt a place because they are trapped there. They haunt it because it is the only home they have left.
And that closes episode 357, The Ghosts of Moonville Tunnel, the railroad that left its dead behind. Tonight, we followed a railway into the hills of southeastern Ohio through a community that vanished, past real accidents and deaths, and into 4 enduring legends: the engineer, the brakeman, the Lavender Lady, and the bully. Maybe they are 4 separate spirits. Maybe Moonville's tunnel on railway grade had become a kind of archive for the people the town left behind. Either way, I'm not walking through there after dark without checking who is carrying the lantern. Thanks for joining us on The Shadow Frequency. You can stop by our website, shadowfrequencypodcast.com, where you can find the full show archive, companion blog, merchandise, show notes, and everything else related to the Shadow Frequency. Keep sending us those emails and voice messages, because yours may tune up in a future episode. We'll be back with another strange case waiting somewhere between the documented and the impossible. You guys want to say goodnight?
Good night, everybody. Thanks for walking the old Moonville line with us. And wherever you are listening tonight, keep an eye on the lights ahead of you. Some signals may be meant for trains that stopped running a very long time ago.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening, and Joe, keep those headlights on out in Utah. As for Moonville, I think I'll admire that tunnel from a nice, safe distance, and preferably in broad daylight.
Good night, my shadowy friends. Until next time, if you catch the scent of lavender where nothing is blooming, maybe don't turn around too quickly. Keep the signal grounded and the shadows wired.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your entertainment.
It's a trap!